Class, welcome to week 5, which we're talking about the managing of performance. And in this lecture, we're going to be going over the global supply chain, the supply chain dependency and solidarity, benchmarking, why companies need to do so, value-based performance and their indicators, risk-based supply chain management and their benefits and issues with those with risk within the supply chain. Hey, let's start off talking about the global supply chain as a whole. The globalized business environment has resulted into an environment where many organizations share more or less a similar supply chain structures and suppliers. In this regard, any disruption in the supply chain for one organization is a threat to the other organizations. Generally, supply chain is about ensuring that the raw materials and the finished products are managed appropriately so that the raw materials can be reviewed in time and the finished product shipped out in a good time. The dependency of the supply chain. Given that the major global players in the supply chain industry offer their services to most of the other major organizations in the world, the need for the organizations to work together to confront their vulnerabilities has emerged. In the past, when companies had invested in a supply chain technology, the company expected the technology to work as advertised. However, such systems of control are inadequate in the international supply chain, where critical capabilities must be ascertained. Given that the result is more or less the same for all organizations involved in the international supply chain, companies have decided to work together in countering the risk within the ISC, which means the international supply chain. The role of supply chain solidarity. Supply chain solidarity has been used by organizations involved in the ISC as a way of facing their external dependencies together so that they can better the supply chain environment. The supply chain solidarity has become in the form of international conventions, standardizations, and other measures that have been put into place by organizations to reduce their supply chain risk. So why benchmarking? Well, in a competitive business environment as we are today, leaders must put into place measures and processes designed to help them manage their organizations effectively. Usually, organizations' success is based on certain organizational principles that are dictated by the culture as well as the mission of the organization. However, these measures and principles have been developed by any organization, do not exist in a vacuum. Usually, in order to increase competition, organizations must compare their performance with their competitors from time to time. With value-based performance, benchmarking is important in assessing the health of an organization. By using systems such as value-based performance management, an organization can assess its own performance and compare it to the rival companies. What makes benchmarking different from the other performance management strategies is the fact that it focuses on the value of the organization and how they deliver to the customers, shareholders, and other stakeholders. So what are some of the performance indicators? The key benefit of benchmarking is the fact that it provides an organization with performance indicators. By identifying the strengths and weaknesses and comparing them with that of their competitors, a company is able to work out ways of beating the competition. Comparison enables the organizations to identify performance indicators and use them as a tool to fight off competition or develop unique organizational culture that can spur the growth of an organization. For example, Apple, when they had to retool themselves, and in the early 2000s, they came out with the MP3 player, or what we now call the iPod, and they differentiated themselves with the other MP3 players by offering a product that everybody wants and simple to use, and gave it some type of prestigious feel to it, so everybody had to have one. So let's talk about managing supply chain risk. How do we do that? Well, you got risk-based supply chain management. Therefore, so any supply chain involves many activities that transform natural materials into finished products that can be used directly by customers. Given that most activities in the supply chain are time-based, and organizations must ensure that everything runs smoothly so that the expectations and the stakeholders are met. However, most of the time that is not possible, and the organizations have to deal with the various risks. So the benefits of the risk supply chain management. Well, focusing on supply chain risk is also beneficial in various ways. Research has demonstrated that risk-based supply chain management is effective in managing stock and providing opportunities for risk assessment. This means that strategy allows organizations to detect their risk and vulnerabilities in a good time and in enough time to allow them to implement different supply chain strategies. For organizations that deal with highly volatile products, risk-based supply chain management allows them to consider alternative sourcing arrangements so that their production is not interrupted or jeopardized in any way. What are some of the issues with the risk-based supply chain management? Given that realization that supply chain exposes organizations to various risks, some organizations have focused on the need to reduce their supply chain risk. This is often a holistic approach where all stakeholders within the supply chain are involved. The mitigation activities involved in supply chain risk management might include security, logistics, and finance. Although the main focus of such activities is to make the supply chain more efficient, sometimes it becomes labor and resource intensive to the extent that the efficiency desired is not achieved. For an example, benchmarking allows the cost, cycle time, productivity, and quality of a product process to be compared with the market level at its best practice. For instance, a company can decide to compare with the best practices of a transportation rate in sea freight, air freight, and supply chain, among others. In the transport industry, there exist a few benchmarks as it is not regularized. In the maritime markets, the Baltic Index is the only effective parameter used. Transport companies specializing in dry ships, tank fixtures, and the sale of merchant vessels are benchmarked using the Baltic Index. The platform will allow a transport company to assess its strategy, whether it's effective or it needs updating. The strategy can be evaluated based on the statistical analysis of the transport and logistics sector. It will allow both local and international comparison. A business will be able to know whether their prices need to be renegotiated. Typically, this platform would allow the company to be able to compare the trade rates, quantify unique requirements, offer suggestions on how to close the market gaps, and provide more information that is helpful in competition sourcing. An example of that is a client who uses sea and air freight to transport her electronic gadgets across the globe. The benchmarking team, in conjunction with the client, had to identify the shipment options, traffic lane, their processes, and volumes they can accommodate. This was done in comparison with the existing data. The team will come up with the most affordable options that it can achieve to increase revenues and subsequently more profits. So, when you're talking about managing performance, companies really they will take time to look at the different things that's causing them to, do what the things they do well, and what are the things they can improve upon, and what are the things that are causing them to lag behind with the competition. So the more that a company continues to evaluate itself, the better off they will be in the long run. All right, this is the end of week 5.